Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. So once again, I'd like to turn to the entertainment industry as a source of inspiration and education about the notion of what companies need to do to adapt to change in the business climate, adapting to how consumers are changing and how technologies are changing. I was prompted to think about this by a recent Fast Company article about an appearance that was made at the University of Southern California. It was the opening of the new interactive media building at USC's School for Cinematic Arts. And the two guys who were speaking, well, they know a little something about the cinematic arts. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Now, I'll provide a link to the article in the text version of this. But basically, what they were talking about were the fundamental and dramatic ways in which their industry is changing and how they feel they have to adapt if they're going to continue to be relevant. Lucas, for example, he said that, quote, the collision of movie, television, and video games and the internet content represents a rare godsend for creative types. Right now, there are amazing opportunities for young people moving into the entertainment industry to say, hey, I think I'm going to do this because there's nobody to stop me because all the gatekeepers have been killed. That's a theme that Jeff Bezos talks about a lot, about the fact that gatekeepers slow innovation. And Spielberg, when he was talking, he was addressing the fact that there are so many mega budget movies with lots of explosions and special effects and not so much character and plot exposition. He talked about that this could be an enormous problem for the entertainment industry. He said there's going to be a big implosion, a big meltdown where 3 or 4, maybe even a half dozen of these mega budgeted movies are going to go crashing into the ground, and they may take the industry with it, fundamentally changing the way people think about what those movies need to be. Now, the irony, of course, is that Spielberg and Lucas, well, they have some culpability here when it comes to the idea of the big budget movie, right? The big summer successful movie. Spielberg pretty much invented the concept with a little movie called Jaws. And Lucas perfected the concept with the Star Wars movies, right? So they have some culpability here. Although I think I would argue that they have less culpability than studio executives who, once those movies took place, well, they wanted all movies to do Jaws and Star Wars numbers. And they were better at reading spreadsheets than they were at reading screenplays and the books on which those screenplays were based. I think they have a little bit more blame, but listen, there's probably enough blame to go around for an industry that Spielberg and Lucas would argue was sort of circling the drain in a lot of ways. In their session, both Lucas and Spielberg talked about how virtual technologies are going to sort of change the whole entertainment and game experience. How there could even be things like variable pricing, where you'll pay a lot more to go see Man of Steel on opening weekend than you will to see Lincoln. And that in some ways sort of makes a lot of sense. But the big point, and I think the one that every business needs to take into consideration, is how even these two guys, the most expert and accomplished practitioners of the cinematic arts, are saying to themselves, okay, we have to change because consumers are changing, technology is changing, and therefore the business has to change. And that's something that retailers really have to think about. Consumer needs are changing. Consumer demands are changing. Consumer wants are changing. And, the world of big data, of mobile marketing, of e-commerce, all this stuff is reshaping and rejiggling the cards. And, the minute you start saying to yourself, well, we're not going to change in these kind of fundamental ways, you put yourself at a competitive disadvantage. Now, here's the good news. The basic core value, the essential thing, like selling things of value to the consumer, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whatever it happens to be, that doesn't change, right? You're still trying to fulfill some basic consumer needs. It's everything around it that's changed. And this is something Spielberg talked a little bit about. When he was talking about how available technology was changing the storytelling process, he still pointed to the fact that story and character, at the end of the day, are going to be a differential advantage for the people who can do a better job with that. He said, the thing I emphasize to everybody who comes to work at my company is, don't play with the toys until you have something to say. I think that's an enormously important observation. So the lesson is clear, right? You got to stay, you got to stay focused on the core mission. You have to stay true to it. But you have to be willing to change virtually everything else if you're going to be relevant to a changing consumer in a changing world. And here's the thing. If you're not willing to do that, well, somebody else will be. And that somebody else is going to be the competition. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.